I didn't plan on this being my next video. I was working on something else, but then San Deigo Comicon happened, and we got some new Ninjago information. And some of it ticked me off. We got our first look at the full trailer for Season 3 Part 2, and as someone who hasn't seen the majority of the leaked episodes, this is very exciting. We got our first official tease for 2026, which is interesting. And it was confirmed that Dragon's Rising was greenlit for a 4th season, which wasn't something we needed to hear, but I guess it's nice anyways. But then there's some other stuff, like it was said that Zorik is a wolf. Which, like, what? Noct and Rox are already wolves, which makes sense because they're siblings, but then Kerr is apparently a jackal, which would make 4 out of 5 of the Forbidden 5 canines, which makes Drix feel incredibly out of place, being a bug. I still like my original idea of Zorik being a snake and him having a snake tail, which is impossible now that we've fully seen him, but I'm sure most people would agree that's better than making him yet another dog. This isn't really relevant since it's never once even referenced in the show that the 5 are corrupted animals, like to the point where I intentionally left that detail out of my Forbidden 5 video because it's so irrelevant. But still, here goes Zorik once again screwing things up. Man can't do anything right. Okay, so some new information has come out since I recorded the original script for this video, and that's that there was one point in time where all of the Forbidden 5 were wolves. That's why the Wolf Clan is the Wolf Clan. But then the set designers came up with Drix and really liked the idea of him being an insect, so then the writers were forced to change him to an insect. And then they also changed Kerr into a jackal for some reason. And then they just never changed Zorik, leaving us with this very lopsided group of animals, I guess. If they were forced to change Drix, then why didn't they just go ahead and change Zorik into something else as well? And why would they change Kerr into a jackal? At least make him something other than a dog. But then we get to the immensely more annoying news. So remember how the show said mysteries like where's WyldFyre from, and who is the administrator, and who is Egalt's previous human student? Remember all those questions the show clearly proposed for the audience? Well, apparently the show doesn't see any need to answer any of those things. Yeah, the show doesn't feel the need to tell us where WyldFyre, one of our main characters, is from. Egalt's previous human student, the entire reason he's so against training the ninja. That's his entire arc in Season 2, him opening up and beginning to trust and see the good in people again. And the show sees no need to show us where that stems from. The administration has gotten a weird amount of focus in the first 3 seasons, and characters have referenced someone called the administrator. The show seemed to be building up to this character, but no. This is kind of a follow-up to my last video, where there I talked about how it seemed the show is postponing and giving us answers, but here I'm talking about how the show is just deciding to straight up not give us answers. Why? You clearly ask all of these intriguing questions, but if you don't plan to pay them off, then why ask them at all? Now, while we won't be getting these answers in the show, we will be getting them in future pieces of media, whether that be books, shorts, or even whatever show comes after Dragon's Rising. I hate this. Sure, Ninjago is now one big universe and branching out into different forms of media. And while stuff like monstrosity is great, this kind of stuff is not. Remember back when Quest for the Lost Palace came out? Remember how everyone thought that story should have been in the show itself and on some random tie-in book? Yeah, this is the same case, but worse. Because the ninja losing and regaining their powers is nothing new. We could easily just assume how their powers came back between Crystallize and the Merge. But stuff like where WyldFyre is from and Egalt students, that's stuff that can't just be easily assumed. That's stuff that's going to stick in people's heads while watching the show. Those are things people are going to want and expect answers for. Stuff like one of our main characters' origins should not be in a fun tie-in book or series of shorts. That should 100% be something in the show. And for someone like me who's a hardcore fan, I will one day definitely learn the answer to all of these things. But what about a more casual fan? What if some random person sits down, watches Dragon's Rising all the way through, and leaves the show liking it, but also feeling unsatisfied in some places? Why should that person be forced to go out and buy a book just so they can feel satisfied. Dragons Rising should be one self-contained story. You should be able to watch it and then not have to go consume other pieces of media like books, internet shorts, or even other shows to get the full experience. Going back to the administrator in particular, like I said earlier, the administration has gotten a really weird amount of focus in all 3 seasons of the show. Like, they're pretty important at some point in all 3 seasons. And you would think that this would all be building towards something, and it might still be, but the one mystery about it turned out to not be relevant, at least to this show. Also during Comic-Con, we learned that the administration would be getting more focus in Season 4. So I wonder what the heck that could be about, since it's not going to be about the administrator. Okay, so once again, some new information has come out about this. Apparently, back when that original administration episode was written, the plan was for the administrator to play a role in Dragons Rising. But then at some point, some higher-ups came in and were like, no, don't do that. We don't know why, but yeah, apparently the original plan was for the administrator to be important. But now he is not for some reason. That really sucks. And now that we know these 3 things aren't going to be resolved, who knows what else we might not get answers for. There could be other things that won't get answered, and we just don't know it yet. What's the line here? How unimportant does something have to be to get asked? Since I would say the origins of one of our main characters is pretty important, but I guess the show doesn't agree with me. This combined with what I talked about in my last video is really starting to make me question things, and maybe even lose a bit of faith in the show. And the only thing I know to do is just hang on and see how things play out. Since like I talked about in my last video, with a show like DR, we just gotta give the writers the benefit of the doubt and hope they know what they're doing and can make it all work out. This was some very disappointing news and really ticked me off, and I just wanted to talk about it. But how do you guys feel about this news? And with that, if you enjoyed, I'd really appreciate it if you took 2 seconds to like and subscribe. Bye.